show tonight. Indeed, we bring you the best experts in hypnosis, kind of geared towards the stage and performance side of hypnosis from around the world. And tonight is no exception. Let me just check my sound on here. We have sound and we have Natasha Stanley. So if we lose sound, she will kick my ass and tell me off. Natasha Stanley is here. It wouldn't be a Grant Talks Funny Bits without Natasha. And Natasha actually helps behind the scenes as well on this show. So I doff my cap to you, Natasha. Thank you very much for that. And tonight's guest, or today's guest, this morning's guest, however it is you are watching from, today's guest is a absolute kind of, Adam Richard Deal is here as well. The whole team's here. So tonight's guest is a fantastic kind of ambassador for the world of hypnosis. Not only is he doing it, he is promoting it. And if you have an interest in hypnosis and you're on that thing they call the internet, no doubt you have seen one of his videos, one of some other people that were involved in his organization's videos, or any of the people that were involved in any of his events videos, because they're absolutely everywhere. So without further ado, if you're into hypnosis, he doesn't really need much of an introduction, but this guy's been in the industry for a very long time. In fact, he was the world's youngest clinical hypnotherapist in 1999. So please put your applause emoji, show your support, get your questions ready for the one, the only Scott Sandland. There he is.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Scott, tell me about you. Tell me about Scott before hypnosis.
There isn't much of Scott before. Yeah. More than half my life has been in the industry. Wow. So I got into hypnosis as a teenager. The long story short of it, I was a pretty elite athlete. You know, I practiced with the Olympic team. I knew I wasn't ever going to go to the Olympics, but I was good enough to play with Olympians. Hey, Adam. And that was in water polo. And the long story short was I was in a car accident where I ended up on pavement. Hurt my everything, like shoes flying off, shoulders coming out of the sockets, all that stuff.
Wow.
And I got severely injured, found out that I don't respond well to opiates. Just like the amount of opiates I have to take to get any pain relief is the amount that would make me not a productive human being on earth. And so I suffered. and out of desperation and completely skeptical, went to a hypnotist, tried it. It worked way better than I thought it would, and started just kind of getting into it, learning, and then kind of taking what she was doing with me for my pain control, and then very immature and irresponsibly going and trying to do that same thing with my friends, an hour later, like so many of us did when we were getting started. And it worked enough that, I got the bug and went and took some trainings, reached out to Roy Hunter and, read his books, and then genuinely just called him. And I was like, hey, I want to learn hypnosis and I've read your books. And he introduced me to a person. I took some trainings, and the rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting there, Ken, about the whole, out of desperation. I always think that people they'll go through everything else. They go and see a hypnotherapist because they can't find a witch doctor in the yellow pages.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's amazing how many of us come to this from wanting that kind of, almost a skepticism, but from that needing that help, and from our experience, go, wow, this is a powerful tool. Yeah. But again, being a teenager doing hypnosis, I know my mum was a kind of therapist. She was very much into hypnosis and stuff, and that was where I got my first exposure to it. So I remember kind of, one, not wanting to go into that field, but two, having lots of fun with suggestion and hypnosis as a teenager. And all I can say is just thank God there was no Facebook back then.
So when I was a freshman in college, one of the things that we did a lot as sort of like a pre-party in the dorm rooms was me hypnotizing people. And I had never taken a class on stage hypnosis at that time. I had read a couple, I'd read Orrin McGill's book, a couple, nothing interesting, all the basics. But because of that, I didn't know routines or patter or anything else. So like there's that natural progression in the stage show, like you're cold, now you're hot, the person next to you smells good,
Yeah.
like the sort of basics that are good for especially people learning how to get stuff done. I didn't have any of that benefit. So I was doing gimmicks just kind of based on what was around me, very organically, much more like
Right.
a street hypnosis kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was phenomena which for me required the arrogance of youth and like the superpower component and Jedi mind trick that we all sort
Yeah.
of played with early on. So that was definitely there for me, and that gave me a lot of confidence
Yeah.
in the clinical work I did subsequent to that.
Yeah, I was just about to kind of tie that together, that confidence from messing around with hypnosis in the dorm rooms and stuff, kind of, it's got to help with that kind of confidence when you're seeing clinical clients. I speak a lot with some hypnotherapists, and they've kind of gone from counseling to therapy to becoming a therapist to then treating people, but have bypassed that playing with hypnosis and what it is and isn't.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a bolt on from an NLP course, or
Yeah.
it's something else, and so they're very Ericksonian, very permissive, very fluffy. So I do think it helps having that the playful side of it as well.
Yeah, and there's I've done a couple like stage shows, but very few. Most of what I've done is more of that sort of like at a frat party as a 19-year-old kid or 18-year-old kid, hypnotizing a couple guys on the basketball team.
Yeah.
And making them, make asses of themselves in front of a bunch of people, all in good fun and all those fun things.
Yeah.
But I learned how to, like, just through trial and error, learn how to like read the person and all those things that go into it, and what kind of phenomena is working with this person, how far I can push this person, who to weed out because they're not responsive to what I'm doing. All those things translated really directly to the way I did my intake. And I was doing clinical work in like dental offices where I was working in a clinic for inner city kids with dental issues. So it was a charity for kids in America who are they slipped through the cracks. They couldn't get the state funded stuff, but they couldn't afford real stuff. And so it was this charity that helped those kids. Great organization, but all those kids had horrible dental experiences in the past. So my job was to de-traumatize a room full of kids who were terrified about being in the dental office. And so the stuff I had done in frat houses, however many years prior, all of a sudden came back. So I'm doing gluing their eyes shut and little simple phenomena, and then turning that into, what I could utilize later. And so and this is, one of the most broken records that we all say, but it's super true. One of the best things that happened for me as a clinician was the confidence I gained because of demonstrational hypnosis and just utilization of phenomena.
Yeah. I think, hypnosis aside, whatever you do in life, if you have the ability to stand on a platform and demonstrate what you do, it's always going to be the best marketing tool in the world that you can do if you can get out there and do it. That must be quite interesting as well, kind of doing the dental phobia stuff actually in a dentist office as such. So there's no go away, see if it works, and then maybe, do you know what I mean? You're there, you're in it, if you know what I mean. So that's
genuinely in the room with kids that historically have to be strapped down.
Wow.
Like, and the dentists don't enjoy that either.
No.
But they're having to strap down a kicking, screaming, crying kid so that they can take care of them.
Yeah.
And resolve their medical issue. And so the president of that organization said, "Scott, any day you're here, we want no kids to ever be strapped down." And I went there once a month for 7 or 8 years, and one kid was strapped down in that period of time. And that was because the dentist wouldn't listen to me. But more importantly, there were all these kids who had notes on their charts, and there was like a sticker on your chart if you were one of those kids They had to get put into the quiet rooms because it was much more traumatic. So many of the kids got that sticker removed from their charts. And so they were no longer traumatized by the idea of a doctor. And all of a sudden they could like have ownership of, overcoming a scary thing, but then also not being afraid to go to the dentist next time, which means they're going to go sooner, which means it's not going to be bad, which is this whole wonderful virtuous cycle of helping these people. And then I got to bring my students. So I was bringing my hypnosis students, and they were working in that clinic too for a couple of years.
And I think it's so important to not just learn hypnosis, but to do hypnosis. I mean, you will know. There's probably no one more in touch with training courses than anyone else out there. But you will see people that are kind of habitual course attenders that will do every course, but don't necessarily put themselves in the trenches and do it. And I think I very much have that kind of, that barrier of perfection. It has to be right before I make it out there. But sometimes just putting it out there is something else. So just quickly saying hello to Tony Charles,
Hey, Tony.
who says good evening, Tony. Tony's got a show coming up in Ipswich here in the UK very soon. In fact, April the 9th, I believe it is, isn't it, Tony? But Tony's quite new to the stage hypnosis world, but he's absolutely smashing it. And he's done it the right way. He's kind of come into it and straight away done some really nice promo, recorded some really good video footage. And so he's starting where most stage hypnotists in the UK kind of end, which is really good.
Nice.
So you're a hypnotherapist, you're doing your clinical work. At some point, something comes to you and you go, I'm going to set up a forum and get hypnotists together so they can bicker and fight.
So I benefited greatly from the Yahoo groups. And you and I were talking very briefly about it before we started, that the Yahoo groups were obviously pre-Facebook, early internet was these forums, and they were black text on white screens and no multimedia, nothing.
If you had a GIF, you were fancy.
Yeah. And the other people hated you because they were on dial-up and their load time was terrible. So that was where I learned a lot. And, I got mentors out of that, and I got so many things. Colin, yes, I have stuck a COVID test up Colin's nose, I don't know, half a dozen times, maybe. It's just a hobby. I don't think he has COVID. I just swing by his house every now and again and just do it.
I've heard it's Colin's thing now.
It pays well.
Yeah.
So the Yahoo groups. So I was getting mentors. I was getting all this stuff. And then I had no aspirations to build one. I had nothing. And then I was at a party just with friends. And a buddy of mine said, hey, there's this new thing where you can build your own MySpace. Yeah. And I said, I can build my own MySpace? He goes, yeah, you can have it be a niche for whatever you want. And this guy was building one for the thing he was in, which is, not relevant. I was like, oh, okay. Pulled out my BlackBerry.
Wow.
And registered hypnosis.ning.com. And I was like, I'll just build the one for hypnosis. Put up a couple things, didn't do anything with it at all for about a month. And then one of my first instructors ever passed away. A woman named Janet Macy, who those who knew her loved her, but most people didn't know her. She was one of those kind of best kept secrets. And so I wrote a eulogy to her because she's my friend. And I didn't know what to do with it. Like I just sort of wrote it more like just for myself, like just kind of like a journaling kind of thing. But it was a eulogy. And so I posted it on hypnosis.ning.com, which was not, a thing, and shared it with a couple of our mutual friends and say, hey, here's what I said. Because there wasn't a vehicle for transmitting your ideas online in the way that there is now. It's just a different world. And so I posted that, and dozens of hypnotists came in and just left a comment and a like, and oh, Janet was wonderful, or oh, this is such a great tribute to your friend, and simple things. And all of a sudden I said, oh, this could be a little bit of a thing.
Mm.
And one of the people who was there early on said, if you do this right, you might end up with 500 people on this website of yours. And I was like, I think we can do better. And then we started adding 200 people a month every month for the next 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, it clearly is one of the biggest. It's the biggest. It's without a shadow of a doubt, and it's of such a size now that there isn't a comparison. It must have had its frustrations in the earlier days.
There were a lot of frustrations. I mean, part of it was there was so much inventing it as I went, and coming up with policies where I was a nobody. Like, no one knew who I was. No one cared about my opinion. I wasn't a guy who was like, I'm a thought leader in the industry now. I'm comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
I did not have any of that going for me. I was a kid, and hadn't earned my reputation. I'd been speaking at a couple conferences, but not, I wasn't packing rooms. And all of a sudden I was telling, Gil Boyne how to play by the rules on my website. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of moments where I was really trying to figure out what that should be and what the rules were. And everybody wants exceptions to the rules. I mean, that's who hypnotists are. And so there's a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of coming up with policies. For a year, I created 2 cartoon people that were my moderators. One of them was, and I made animations with voices of them. And one of them was me with a pitch shift. And one of them was literally the lawyer who had the office next door to mine. Her name was Jennifer. And we created a cartoon of her. And so I had these 2 animated avatars of moderators so that I could, and then I would control Jennifer's as well, because she didn't care. She was a lawyer doing her, private practice. But it gave me this illusion of an organization early on, so I could have Mark or Jennifer's avatar then, go to the important person and say, Michael DeShalit, you've got to stop doing this. In fact, that's how Richard Nongard and I met. Was one of his admins, it was actually his ex-wife, was violating our community policies and just spamming the site. And so I wrote a message to Richard Nongard saying, what the hell are you doing? You can't do this. I'm sick of taking down your stuff. And, and he pushed back with, I don't know who the hell you are. I don't know what your website is. I've never had a hypno thought. What's going on here? And we really quickly figured it out that it was his ex-wife who was working for him, just spamming stuff. And he's one of my best friends in the industry now.
Yeah.
And it all came from he and I arguing over his ex-wife spamming my website.
That's such a great point, though, that especially with hypnotists and egos, quite a few of us have them. But to be able to have a discussion, have a disagreement, but then through that become friends is how it should be.
And most of my good friends in the industry started with a disagreement. Jason Lynette and I started with a big fight. He's told the story. He thought I was going to physically fight him.
Oh, wow.
The first time we met. And
is that an exclusive? Is that the big thing for HTLX?
That's what
Jason Lynette are going to box.
Jason gave a keynote a couple years ago and talked about it on the stage. I mean, I called him out, swearing at him, and we hugged it out that day.
Nice.
Because you're right, we do have egos, and we have to appreciate that every one of us is used to being like the God complex guy or woman in our office, where everyone comes to us and says, nothing else worked, but you helped me. You're the amazing one.
Yeah.
And where we start, that echo chamber starts sounding really familiar and really accurate. And then we start forgetting that our colleagues are doing the same thing too.
Yeah. And I think, and what a great segment that is, I think that's why conferences are so important. It's because, don't get me wrong, online communities are great, but there is a mask with an online community, and that mask is very much on there. but an actual face-to-face conference, workshop, trainings, they're places where you get to meet those people. And I've met people that have been online, can be quite big characters and quite threatening, and then when you meet them face to face, are actually pussycats and really nice people. And
Totally.
yeah, and I think that's why it's so important. I've made some of my closest friends in the hypnosis friends through face to faces. Jim Kellner, I love Jim Kellner just because of his terrible British accent. But his British accent's better than my American. But that again was from meeting at a conference, and I think that's where real connections are made. At training courses, that's where tribes are formed. And I think a lot of people, they've learned with this school, so this school must be terrible, and this is this, and this is that. But at conferences, you get people that come from all different kind of backgrounds, different trainings, and people get to mix.
Yeah, the feuding tribes in hypnosis have been a problem for 50 years, right? Whether you're saying Ellman was this and Erickson was that, which is obviously an oversimplification that we know, but they do that. But then you're also like, oh no, I trained with this trainer and this is how to do things and it's the only way to do things. Or I'm a member of this organization, not that organization, or whatever, however you're creating these tribes. And I just think like just chunking up and just being like, how are we arguing about style that much? And when we all recognize that what we're trying to do is help people, like that's it. Like you can talk about modality, you can talk about the specific techniques and whatever, but ultimately all of us have made a commitment to show people, whether it's in an entertainment venue or it's in a clinical venue, to demonstrate to people the power they have and the resources they have to change their own lives.
Yeah.
And if I don't understand how there's something that's distracting somebody from that shining bright light. Like that's the story.
Yeah.
And I think we're reminded of that at conferences. And I think we're reminded, everyone says the real learning happens in the halls. And I think that's the real learning. The real learning is that, oh my gosh, this person is a real person, and this big persona is somebody who genuinely cares. And all of a sudden you have I have vivid memories of having big deal people sit in my class and them saying, you did good, kid. Like the time that Jerry Kine learned my name and told me I was good, I'll never forget that day. I met Orman McGill. I get these moments that are so special when you're trying to find your voice and you're trying to find the confidence and how you stand in the room to be able to take care of these people that really need help, and getting the in-person support of a Michael Ellner who says, no, you've got the goods, kid. That helps for a year. And so those, it charges your batteries in such an important way.
I think that, do you know what? The energy around Hypnothoughts as a conference is quite magical. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass there. As we discussed earlier, I've not had the privilege of getting there yet. I was supposed to be there a couple of years ago. Something happened. COVID happened. It will happen one day if I have to get a paddle boat and paddle over. But there's some guys local to me who are great hypnotists, thought leaders in their field as well. And they get so excited in the build up to it, especially this year as well, which is amazing. And when they come back, they're so energized. And I always love meeting Kaz Wiley for a coffee anyway. But whenever she comes back from Hypnothoughts, she's just up there. And to have someone that's walked her kind of talk for a very long time, to still be that excited, that energized about hypnosis. And that's why they're the people at the top of their game, I think.
And she's giving our keynote this year.
Exactly.
Kaz is, I've said this a lot of times, but I'll say it again. Kaz is one of the people that to me is the embodiment of the conference working, because she's one of those people. Carl Smith is also on that list.
Yeah.
There are people who the first time they showed up at the conference, nobody knew who they were, right? Like they weren't known. They just weren't on anyone's radar. And now they're who they are, right?
Yeah.
They're, and everyone loves Kaz and everyone remembers Carl. But no, like there are these, like the idea of HypnoThoughts really was at the website and at the conference level was really let's just level the playing field. Let's give everybody a shot. Let's remove badges. Let's remove tassels. Let's remove anything that says that I'm a presenter and you're just an attendee, or I'm a board member and you're a vendor. Like, I don't want any of that. Like, I don't want, like, we're not in the military. Like, we don't need our credentials on our lapel. Like, let's just be human beings that all want to help each other, and then be surprised who we learn from.
So you must have said Kazwani's names 3 times because she's just appeared
on schedule.
Brilliant time.
But yeah, I mean, it is that. Hello, Kaz. Like, just this idea of there's such opportunity in this profession to learn remotely, to get good, to develop your own stuff in a vacuum in your office, and come up with something cool. And let's just create a space where you can share that. And sometimes, like, I've told this story as well before too, but not often, that there was like a good 6 months where I thought I invented this finger anchor. Like, I was early in my career and I just like, oh man, this is super useful and handy. And then I saw other hypnotists doing it and going, man, I'm a trendsetter. Like, this is catching on. And then I went to a conference and realized, like, oh, wait a minute, there are statues with this. Probably not original. But so some of it, like, I don't know if I saw someone do it or it's just an obvious thing that's a great utility, and so I did it organically but not originally, or if I picked it up off somewhere, I don't remember. But the conferences are great where you pick up these little things from other people. You learn, oh, the reason this works is because of that. So there's so much about the conference. One of the things, forgive me for rambling, there's one other piece. I was at a conference a couple of years ago and I was talking about a topic that I haven't talked about in a while, which is called Transcending Technique, and about understanding why stuff works so that you don't need the technique, you understand the philosophy behind it, and like the real underpinnings. And I was talking about the hypnotic spiral, and I don't know, there was however many people in the room. I said, quick show of hands, how many people know which way the hypnotic spiral should spin? And people were like, oh, this is a trick question. I go, no, there's a right answer. And they were like, really? And I go, how many? Anybody? And someone says clockwise. And I go, okay, how many people think it's clockwise? And some hands go up. I go, that's wrong. And then someone else goes counterclockwise. And I go, how many people think that's right? And everyone raises their hand because now they know it's not clockwise. And I go, that's also wrong. And everyone's like, it can't, what? And I said, the spiral has to spin in, because it's about converging the eye lines, because you're trying to get eye fixation by locking, getting an eye lock. Same thing with a pocket watch. Same thing with a dot on a wall. The point of the spiral is to focus in. If it's spinning out, their eyes are pulling away and you're not getting the eye fatigue. And everyone is like, where did you learn that? How do you know that? And I was like, that's the most fundamental hypnosis thing, is the spiral. Like, it's cliche. People who know nothing about hypnosis know it uses spirals, and we don't know why. And so I love that at conferences we can, like, that's not a useful thing for most practitioners, but it's a cool little piece of trivia to understand why we're doing what we're doing, and that's the kind of fun stuff that we get to do.
Yeah, it was on one of the groups on Facebook, which is also a great place for debate. So I try not to get involved in them too much. And I remember there was a local stage hypnotist, or local-ish to me, who was saying that he kept having volunteers that when they came around were having headaches, which is quite a common-ish thing with stage hypnosis. And there was loads of people going on about it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of this.
Emerging them too fast or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and I've kind of gone, maybe your problem is, give them a glass of water or a bottle of water, because probably what it is you've got someone that doesn't do much exercise, and you've got them doing a horse race, you've got them doing this, and they're a little bit dehydrated, which is what's causing the headache, which is absolute common sense. And in my experience, 9 times out of 10, that is the solution. The abuse that I got from people who clearly do not know what I'm on about. And I'm like, surely like being dehydrated a little bit is going to cause you to have a headache.
And you get stuck in the frame and the perspective of what is the hypnotic reason behind this, and what is the hypnotic solution behind this, when instead the answer is the dude's thirsty. Right? It can be that simple sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I always admired about Hypnothoughts, you were one of the first conferences that kind of brought the stage element in it. There was always years of that kind of hypnotherapist over here, kind of spiritual hypnosis, clinical hypnosis, and then stage hypnosis, those bad people over there. You kind of brought that in. Can I just say, this year I have noticed there is no stage show. You've taken the stage hypnosis from that.
I did. Yeah.
Why?
Well, a few things. One, yes, we leaned in early on respecting stage hypnotists. I mean, in part because I got clients out of Pat Collins.
Yeah.
Pat Collins had been dead for 15 years, and I still had people saying her name in my office.
Yeah.
And she was on the Lucille Ball show. She was this big deal, like 1960s Hollywood strip stage hypnotist, and I was getting clients 15 years after she was dead. That's crazy. So stage hypnosis is fantastic. We did 9 years of shows. Last year, we had Terry Stokes did his final show ever. He retired on our stage, which was incredible.
Yeah.
Obviously. And we've had some great shows. The reason we're not doing a show this year is because of COVID, actually. The Orleans Hotel restructured the way they create contracts internally. And one of the things they did was they took the stage away from the events group. So this is a little bit of inside baseball and a little boring, but we got a deal on that stage, which is a beautiful big stage. And we got a deal on that stage because we were part of the events and running the whole conference. Those are now different departments, so they give us no discount. So we went from a huge discount, which meant we could break even or turn a little profit, pay the performers, that kind of thing, to we penciled it out. If I had done a really good job, if we had found someone that would have been as big or bigger of a draw than Terry Stokes, which, you work on that in the privacy of your own mind. But, if we had done that good a job, we probably only would have lost 10 grand.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, it's a lot of work to put on those shows. And it requires a lot of going back and forth with the hotel and going back and forth with the performers. And, you're scheduling an event on top of an event.
Yeah.
And doing it to lose that much money is tough. And if we had just put it in the banquet room, which we could have done, just to make something happen, I felt bad asking people to fly across the planet to be in this city where David Copperfield and Blue Man Group and Penn and Teller and Cirque du Soleil are, and have them sit in a banquet room.
Yeah.
Like there's so many top rate shows for whatever you want that it doesn't make sense to try to compete with those. So we're actually in the middle of figuring out what we want to do. And maybe that's Kevin Lepine's show. Maybe that's Penn and Teller's show. Maybe that's, something, Britney Spears. I don't know if she's still performing. It could be something, but the idea is creating fun for an experience for the people who are in Vegas for maybe the only chances they get to go to Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah. So wait, whilst we're here as well, let me just pop up a quick link to the website for the conference as well. If there's anybody that's watching this on YouTube or wherever, and they want a link, that will put in, let me just pop this up here. That should put a link in the comment section. That's to the Hypnothoughts X, as they're going up like iPhones now.
And we sure are. Yeah. So we are 10-year anniversary. We decided we were Hypno Thoughts Live. We still are, but it just people started calling us HT Live, and then people started calling us HTL. And so I just decided this year to really lean in on the letters and just be HTLX.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. Colin says a Banachek's show would be awesome.
I just had a conversation about Banachek's show and it being on the list of things we're thinking about 2 hours ago. I'm totally with you, Colin.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I mean, again, you've got such a diversity of speakers at the conference. I know this year you've got, is it like a panel? So you've got kind of some newer hypnotists involved as well. You've got the panel discussions. Tell us a little bit about the thought behind that.
So my rule of thumb has always been I want a ballpark of 20% of our presenters should be new presenters every year. And most conferences do not do this.
Yeah.
Most conferences, and this is a huge advantage we have. Other conferences are historically, and when we started, it was overwhelmingly true with the exception of Mid-America, all the conferences were owned by an organization. And so those conferences had a responsibility to feed that organization. And the organization was, the thing that was most important, and the conference was a subset.
Yeah.
And with HypnoThoughts, it's only HypnoThoughts. And there's even some people where they're putting on an event, but it's about them and it's about their name and building their brand, which I totally respect. But we're not doing that. Like, I don't even teach hypnosis almost at all anymore because I think it's my responsibility to focus on doing this well and not creating those conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
And so that means I get to go find the new voices, and that's my job. And so I get to find the Kaz Rileys, the Ken Gutsos, the whoever. I could name a lot of people. And in finding them, giving them a space to get their first talk.
Yeah.
And giving them a place where we say, look, there's so much value at this conference that if you suck, people aren't going to want their money back. They're going to be able to absorb a 1 hour bad talk.
Yeah.
But also this might mean, year 2, you're good, or year 3, you're good. And we put multi-year investments into new presenters every year. And I got this great advice from Shelley Stockwell and Carm. And, they've both run conferences, and they said, you've got so many new people, and some of them are fantastic, but some of them really need more structure. And so you need to help give them structure to be great. And a panel means that they could put an experienced presenter in the room with them. So that means the room will be full, right? Because you get a person who's established. So you're going to get known. So you're not just flying across the country as your first time presenting and speaking to an empty room because you're not known yet. Even if you're legitimate, you just might not be known in this audience.
Yeah.
So that means we're going to get people in your room. It means if you're truly new, you're going to get to have someone to kind of support you in the moment, and you get to then watch all the other presenters. So it sort of de-risks new presenters for everybody involved. The new presenter, less likely that they're going to screw up and fail because they've got a established, recognized person, that they won't speak to an empty room for the same reason. So now all of a sudden they can get known for their ideas. The audience is going to get good content, and we're going to help find more talent. So it's just, again, creating virtuous cycles. When you think of a conference, not in 1 year increments, and a lot of people do. We think of the conference in 3 to 5 year increments. So everything we're thinking is always, okay, well, if we do this, what's that do in year 3 of that? And so that allows us to make risks and investments that other people aren't going to do.
Yeah. I thought at the last one, which was kind of, I don't know if COVID was just coming out of, or it was like a COVID conference.
Yeah.
I thought from an events point of view, I thought it was handled really well. As in, I know there was I think somebody got COVID, and there was, it was out there, but it was just handled or managed so professionally. It wasn't like, let's try and hide from this. It was, let's kind of go, this is this, let's deal with it. And I think that says a lot about how it's grown and the organization and the structure that it must take to keep that kind of going and growing as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's just integrity. To me, like, the premise is I respect the people who are there. And I just believe that everyone deserves the truth. There's so much to do. I don't have time to come up with lies. And just everyone deserves the truth. And it is my responsibility to be respectful of all the different viewpoints of the people there and the safety of all the people there, and just help us all have a calm conversation about a thing that is, for some people, incredibly scary and life-threatening. And for some people, a complete non-issue. And for some people, a political issue on either side.
Yeah.
And so to say, look, I'm certain we all won't agree, but what we can do is everything that we call best practices, and what we'll learn from all the people, we'll do our homework, we'll do all these things right. So, and we were also very, very fortunate. I mean, Colin and I were joking about it a minute ago, but, Colin was one of those people who was in the class of the presenter who tested positive. And so there was, this small group of people from that pre-conference class and a couple other people who had gone to dinner. And I pulled all of them in the room, told them what was happening. We went and found them all, tracked them all down, got the list, pulled all those people, did contact tracing in real time, pulled them into a room and said, this is what's going on. We're going to talk through what to do about this. And I'm not going to tell you what's happening. We're going to talk about what's happening because, this is it. And every single one of them was super thoughtful and respectful, and no one went off the handle. No one went crazy. Every single person got it and said, look, what do I need to do to be part of this community and be on this team, regardless of what my specific individual views are? We're all going to play by the same rules here, which was, I couldn't have been more grateful and appreciative to those people for the way they handled themselves in that situation.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I mean, you'd have seen changes, especially at the conferences, on kind of people's presentation styles, how people are going for more kind of factual, formal, very stiff presenters. Tell us about kind of your favorite type of presentation of hypnosis, not necessarily stage stuff, but kind of the deliveries that presenters do.
So the easy way to say it is thoughtfulness. Because going back to what you were talking about earlier, there's those people who go to a lot of trainings. And one of the nice things about trainings is everyone there knows how to respond properly. So they know what to do when you do an arm pull. They know what to do when you tap them in this sequence. Whatever the thing is, everyone knows to be highly responsive. And so demos aren't necessarily amazing. I mean, a good demo is great, don't get me wrong. But I wouldn't say it's just the ability to do a demo. I think it is when a person is demonstrating, either through their speech or through an actual demonstration, that they've internalized this in a way through experience. And you can see little things in a person where you say, oh, that's theirs. Like, I remember the first time I watched Martin Peterson do a demo. I watched, he was doing a demo on me, so I watched it from really close. I watched the way he did an arm pull, or maybe it was a hand drop. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember as he set it up, just a little thing he did, I went, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. And I remember sitting in the back of a room for a different guy who was doing a pen drop induction and doing a demo of that. And I remember leaning over to one of my students who was next to me 20 seconds into the demo going, the demo's not going to work. This guy's never done this for real. And he's only done it in a classroom, and he's never done it with a person who doesn't know. And this person doesn't know, and it's going to fail. And it failed. And the realness, the integrated, synthesized, I think for my money, Sean Michael Andrews has the best footwork in the industry. And if you want to see how to do stage hypnosis, Sean's a small guy and he's doing rapids with big people and no one gets hurt. And he's always in control of those big flopping people because of his footwork. And I love watching that guy's footwork. And he doesn't talk about it, but those are the things that like I really geek out on. And that's where my appreciation is in the industry right now.
What you've just said, then you touched on a point that I think is so important. We do get people that go to trainings that, you know, have superpowers in those training rooms. They're so good. And then they go into the real world. They're not necessarily doing it. And they go back to the culture of trainings. And then they do a talk and they do a training course. And then they want to bypass the legwork.
Yeah.
You know, they want to bypass the doing the work, the failing at it, and then go straight to being the guru. And I think that's what can give us as an industry a bad name, especially as stage hypnotists. You can, you know, if you've not got the experience, sometimes the audience picks up on that and they just see a bad show. So then they go away thinking stage hypnosis is just a bit boring. Or if they see a talk or demonstration on hypnosis, they go away going, it doesn't really work. I liked what you said about when you can tell when someone's in it, when they're authentic with it. Because I think I did a talk a couple of weeks ago and I use a demonstration as a fallback. If I've not quite got the audience where I want them to be, as in just a talk on mindset, I'll then go do a demonstration of it, which I was annoyed at myself for doing that because I promised myself I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to turn it into a show. It was about the talk of it. So I think as a performer, that's a bad habit I've got to get out of. But yeah, I always like to fall back on that. So how do you vet presenters?
We do so much more in vetting than people like. Next week, I think we're going to be publishing a program of all the presenters, like a PDF that everyone can download and take a look at. And when you look at that, you'll be like, this is a lot. That's what we kept.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who got no's, who just aren't presenting.
Yeah.
And then the math comes out to somewhere between 3 to 1 or 4 to 1. So for every one yes, we have to give 3 or 4 no's. And that's not necessarily to a presenter. Like you might apply for 2 talks and we say yes to this one, no to that one. So that would count as a no. But it is an ocean of content and a lot of it is really similar to each other.
Yeah.
And so we have to say, okay, well, we have 6 people who want to talk about, you know, vagus nerve, or we have 3 people who want to talk about, you know, regression for sports performance. And so then we have to go through and figure out, okay, this person's given us 3 talks. What are they best at? And also, where do we have a gap where their second best thing is actually something where they would be strongest over here. So we're going to move them there. So the amount that Stephanie and I have to keep our finger on the pulse and know who's got the goods. And I'm sure, you know, there's obviously always room for improvement and we make mistakes. But we put months into just picking who's going to make it. And then like, it's a considerable amount of work. People would be really, really surprised what goes into it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Very quickly, I'll just put up a link to the Hypno Thoughts Facebook group as well. So if anyone's not a member of that, which I'm sure if you're into hypnosis, you should be a member of this. That is the Hypno Thoughts Facebook group there as well. I know you have got a client in 10 minutes time. So just a couple of last quick questions. If you were to recommend 2 hypnosis books, only 2, what would those be?
2 hypnosis books. I would recommend Kitchen Table Wisdom by Rachel Naomi Raman, which most people haven't heard of because it's not a hypnosis book. But if you want to talk about teaching tales, it's about the best there is. Rachel Naomi Raman. Second one would be maybe Monsters and Magic Sticks.
Yeah.
I would say those 2. There are so many good ones. Non-Guard just put out one last year that was good. I always like what the Carsons and Jess Marion write. It depends on what the person wants. But yeah, I would say if you want to do clinical work, if you want to help people, Rachel Naomi Rahman has 2 books. One is called Kitchen Table Wisdom, and the other one's called My Grandfather's Blessings, that you can just read those in the first person to clients, and everyone gets better all the time. Like, they're just the best.
Brilliant. Well, they've just made it onto my list. So yeah, fantastic. And where do you think the hypnosis, both stage and clinical, is going to be kind of in a couple of years down the line after the fallout from COVID has been finished? Putin's dropped his bombs. The world has gone forward.
Right.
Where do you think we'll be?
I think I like to balance what will be different with what will be the same. You know, I had a friend whose dad was in refrigeration, commercial refrigeration. And we talked, and he just said, the world's always going to need cold food.
Yeah.
I got job security because food needs to stay cold. And there's just something true about that, that regardless of what happens and what country you move to or what's popular, or, you know, right now everyone's talking about like apps for helping people sleep, which took me by surprise. I did not realize that was that big a problem, but cool. Like, there's so much money in helping people sleep. It's phenomenal. Regardless of what it is, I think the industry is going to stay the same. There's going to be a critical mass of us that are meeting with each other, you know, paying it forward and paying it back, doing that work, collaborating. There's going to be a group of people that never want to go to a conference, who want to just see clients help people do work. There's going to be a there's going to be a small contingent of people who are just trying to exploit to get a cash grab, and just be like the flash in the pan, and they tend to not last. They tend to burn their bridges. I think it's all going to stay about the same. I think everyone's going to, you know, the top group's going to leave and everyone's going to march up, and the top group's going to leave and everyone's going to march up. And in that transition, when those moments happen, that's when the change occurs. I don't think the change occurs once people are established in their spots. I think the change occurs as the people are bringing what they have into the new spot. Yeah. And so that's what I see. That's what I think is exciting, is when those steps are taking place. And I think we've got a group of people now more than ever that are away from the feuding tribes and are much more of a like big picture us. Yeah. And so I think that's only good for the industry.
Absolutely. And it's never been easier for an idea that is foolish to be kind of discovered and got rid of quicker, rather than us being in our own isolation, creating what we think is brilliant. And then it's not, it's easily kind of, you know, self-regulated in that sense. Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been great to talk to you. I'll put the link up to the conference one more time for people in the comment section. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Like I said, I know you have got a client in 7 minutes time. So
I've always got clients. I'm here. I'm be here now. They're all happy.
But Scott, thank you very much for joining us. Do take care. Hopefully, I shall catch up with you next year. I know Natasha is over there this year, so I do apologize in advance.
But she'll fit right into the alligator bar. We're going to do great.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you very much. Please do check out Scott. Please do check out Hypno Thoughts. And see you same time next week. God bless.